The Indianapolis Colts have positions on the roster that are set. So, which ones are the best of the depth chart? Can Indianapolis see more success with these spots? And which do you, the fans, think can excel the most? Well, good news. Let's talk about it. Welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast, as always, presented by Indianapolis Colts on SI. My name is Drake Wally, deputy editor of the channel and co host of the show. And of course, I'm joined by none other than Noah Gebert, analyst for the channel, fellow co-host of the show. We took a little bit of a break due to my family stuff, but what we were going to do is talk about the opposite of what we talked about on Monday. Of course, we criticized some of these position groups for the Colts and just how much depth and how much additional help was needed. But now we wanted to do the opposite end of things, the ones that they have worked hard to solidify talent and depth and help with. How are you doing, man? How was your weekend? And what are you thinking about the roster in the areas that aren't really in dire need of help?
Yeah, it was good. A good weekend. I think it was a funny time for the break that we took. I know near the end of the last show, Truitt was in the comments saying that we convinced him that the team is terrible because we were talking about all those position groups that had the biggest holes on the roster. We promised we'd get into the optimism side of the roster right now and talk about the strongest position groups and how we feel those groups are going to perform and why we think they're good. It just took a little bit longer than usual. So I guess. All you lovely viewers here had to sit there and listen to the pessimism and the pessimist side of us for a whole week and not get any break from that. So we're here to fix that here on Monday, and excited to talk about some of the good parts of the roster this time.
Yeah, and there's plenty to like. There's plenty to like about what they've done. They made some splashes in free agency. They got some depth in free agency. They definitely had a haul. I think if you can get more than 7 draft picks, that's pretty good, especially when they're addressing multiple needs. But yeah, we'll kind of dive into this. But first, of course, Tracy Johnson says, Colts Nation, stand up. Nice to see you, Tracy. Tony, good to see you. Sean, as always, loyal viewer. Richie Dyer says, I keep hearing about pie. I'm not sure what you mean there. Maybe clarify. Oh, Alec Pierce getting traded. Not a possibility. That's not going to happen. I would be shocked if Indianapolis dealt away their best vertical weapon, one of the best in the NFL. And then, of course, we have Stats Matt here pointing out that I turned into Andrew tonight. My head is shining. Thank you, Stats. I appreciate that. Felt like I just needed a nice fresh buzz to go along with my buzzed face. But without further ado, we'll kind of dive into this. Of course, there were multiple positions that needed addressed. And when we did our first mock draft, we picked, way different than after free agency. So before we jump into this, tell me a little bit about your thoughts on where really the Colts roster is as a whole. Do you think that they're in a spot where the ones that we're going to address here are good enough that they might be able to compete at least for the playoffs?
Yeah, I'll just throw out a spoiler here that quarterback is not going to be mentioned on this list. And unfortunately, I think that's going to be the one that would carry the most weight if you're talking about a potential playoff push or championship contention. You really need to have that quarterback spot nailed down. With that up in the air, who knows, right? It's kind of 50-50 or maybe a little bit less than 50-50 if we're being realistic about what the success at the quarterback position might be. But that doesn't mean that other spots on the roster aren't like well stocked. Like I think we've gone through and we mentioned all those spots that were kind of lacking in either depth or high end talent. I do think there's a few position groups that kind of have both, and you feel pretty comfortable with the depth if somebody goes down, and you feel pretty comfortable with the high end that you get in some of these position groups. I think some of these position groups also we went into this offseason thinking, wow, they really need to address that. That would be like top 3 need on the roster currently, and transformed in one offseason into a position of strength. So yeah, I think we're going to get some that we didn't see any additions made to, and then some that we saw a complete overhaul throughout this offseason.
Yeah, and after you finish 8 and 9, it doesn't matter who you have on the roster. Really, you have to look inward. You have to look at even if you've got a whole bunch of stars. We've seen teams in the NFL that they really make a big splash in free agency. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't when you overhaul a roster and seemingly improve it on paper. So, but yeah, we've also got other things that we might talk about, but we're gonna see where it goes, at least with the position groups, and we'll start off with one that honestly I didn't think could become one of the stronger
Yeah.
position groups, and that is cornerback. Now, this was, we'll kind of give a nice little brief breakdown before we jump into, why. But this was a position that was atrocious last season as far as consistency. And you were leaning on guys like Sam Womack. You were leaning on guys, you
Mhm.
know, like Jalen Jones, who, can definitely play. But the biggest question mark is a guy that you invested a second round pick in Juju Brents. So tell me a little bit about your thoughts on this. I know that Jalen Jones is a guy that you very highly respect. Just a little bit on the room, kind of what it looks like, and then we'll dive into like the actual players and why this is so secure now.
Yeah, we did that first mock draft you mentioned at the top, where we just went straight back to back with cornerback picks, just because before
We
you entered
did.
free agency, it was sorely needed. Like that depth chart was looking rough. If you went back last year, you're relying on guys like Dallas Flowers, Sam Womack to be these consistent starters, which is a really tough position to be in. Guys who were signed, one Dallas Flowers as an undrafted free agent who ended up getting cut after a couple bad performances, and then a guy in Sam Womack who was brought on mostly to be a special teams guy. And they didn't want to put him into that starting lineup at the roster, but Dallas Flowers and the play that he was churning out kind of forced their hand to get him on the field. Luckily, he was a pleasant surprise for them. If that Sam Womack, the performance that he gave last year, if it was any less than that, I think it really would have broken some more holes in that Colts defense, as porous as it was already last season. You would have seen a different result in terms of the win total. So I really think Sam Womack and him kind of breaking out as a defensive player rather than just a career special teamer took him a long way. That being said, I think you're in a position where you enter this training camp and Sam Womack, a guy who kind of was your savior at to a certain extent last season, he's going to be battling for a roster spot. I think he has a good chance to make it, but I still think it's up in the air whether he does or not. There's a couple of guys that are in that same echelon. You're talking about former second round pick and Juju Brents, like you mentioned. Also, I would put in that same tier of guys who are hoping to be cornerback 4, 5, 6. I know Juju Brents kind of always, since he was that second round pick, and he just kind of had uh, this thing about him where if he was healthy, you just kind of assumed that he was the starter. And he hasn't been healthy for so long that I think that's kind of worn off, and you can't assume that anymore. I think you should assume the opposite there, that even if he is healthy, he's going to have to do a lot to earn back and claw back a starting job from guys like Jalen Jones and even Sam Womack. And then you've got third rounder and Justin Wally coming in. This isn't even, I've gone this far of how they've changed things around. I haven't even mentioned that they signed Charvarius Ward, which is your instant cornerback one who's going to be playing inside and out, following the top receiver. That signing really drastically changed the landscape of what the position or what that position group looked like in the depth chart, where you can bump everybody back down to kind of where you expect them to be, where Jalen Jones isn't your cornerback one anymore. And you can let him be kind of this average starting level corner who can maybe grow into something more since he's so young. And I think that suits him a lot better. He's not going to be going up against the number one receiver on opposing teams, and Charvarius Ward's going to take that on. So Jalen Jones will get more favorable matchups, and that just kind of goes all the way down the depth chart. You get other guys who get more favorable matchups. You've got Sam Womack, Juju Brents, Justin Wally. If they do get on the field, they're not facing those tough matchups that they would have last year.
Yeah, and they definitely did a great job addressing this position. They added three cornerbacks, like through the draft, through free agency. You know, one of them's a rookie, fair. Another one is a depth piece, maybe special teamer, fair. But they still did it. They still added cornerbacks. Yeah, right here, I'm feeling like Wally is going to have a bigger role in the secondary than we think. The more I've seen his game tape, the more I like him, and that's what a lot of people have said. DSG is that they really. I'm one of them. I remember thinking to myself, what the hell are they doing? Like with the third round pick, and we graded it, and I had it somewhere in the B range. Noah had it somewhere in like the C range, but it'll be interesting to see where he kind of ends up fitting. He only played outside at Minnesota, like at least in 2024, did not play hardly inside at
Yeah.
all. But that's the notion, is that he's going to back up Kenny Moore. But we'll go ahead and start in this group with the top guy, and that's Charvarius Ward. And this guy had a down season last year. Of course, we've rehashed this. Don't really need to jump into it much, but he had a lot of personal things going on out of his control. And so he was still out there playing 12 games started. Not the best season, but it really is needed to look at his 2023 when the guy was able to log himself a second team All Pro. He was able to log himself a Pro Bowl. And I just have to go over these stats because they're absolutely phenomenal. And no season he's played in his 7 years even compares to this. But he had, in 17 games, he had 5 picks for 91 return yards, a defensive touchdown. He had 72 tackles total. 56 of those were by himself, which for a cornerback, cornerbacks aren't known for tackling. Charvarius Ward is a secure tackler. And then on top of it, he had 23 passes defended, which, yes, it led the entire NFL. You've got about 1.45 a game. I mean, those are numbers that are indicative of a lockdown corner. So you kind of mentioned it, but what does, like, when he was signed, it pretty much elevated the entire room
Yeah.
I mean, the Colts haven't had a guy like that since Stephon Gilmore, Vontae Davis, guys like that, names that a lot of fans really, really miss and respect.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think sometimes you get cornerbacks on teams who are your undisputed cornerback one, but you still just kind of stick them on one side of the field, just lock down that side, and then kind of shade over the other over top of the other side. It was interesting, Lou Anarumo coming out in that press conference mentioning that he's going to be a guy who follows the team's number one receiver. Charvarius Ward echoed that in his press conference, saying that was a big reason why he wanted to come to Indianapolis, because he wanted a role like that and he wanted to challenge himself and be that guy, right? And I think that changes things. I think just in terms of how you're going to play and how you're going to be a little more versatile on the back end, that kind of changed. Like, I think the Justin Wally pick kind of reflects that change in philosophy, where you've got Charvarius Ward, who's going to follow a guy inside, outside, wherever he's going. That's going to move Kenny Moore outside sometimes if you've got Ward playing in the slot. And then you draft a guy like Justin Wally, who, only played outside at Minnesota, but as soon as they picked him, that press conference with Chris Ballard, he mentioned that he likes him as an inside-outside kind of guy. Really the only guy on the roster outside of Kenny Moore that they've at least mentioned could be playing on the inside. Alex Johnson, maybe a former undrafted free agent last year, is a guy that could play on the inside. But yeah, we mentioned that direct backup to Kenny Moore and just what Justin Wally might be. He might also be the backup there at outside left corner, outside right corner. He could be all of it. And I think what you're doing with Charvarius Ward allows you to play that versatile type of defense, to bring in those versatile type of guys and really kind of completely transform that defensive back room, which was sorely needed after last season.
Yeah, and I like what DSG said there. The additions tell me that Lou's definitely running more DBs quite frequently.
Mm-hmm.
That's not, out of the question. I mean, his bread and butter in his defenses is the secondary. It's the safeties and it's the cornerbacks. So I fully expect more. We'll kind of like get through these a little quicker because I know that we're already at 13 minutes. But the next guy I wanted to mention is Jalen Jones. Jalen Jones, people, wasn't even thought to make the roster initially. Now he's pretty much solidified himself as that cornerback too. Like Noah said, he's an above average starter, which, hey, you'll take that, especially with a 7th-round pick. But he's not the fastest guy, but what he is two things. He's very physical, and he will press the crap out of a receiver, and he is very difficult to get past. He's got very good hands. Tell me a little bit more about Jalen Jones. I know that you've watched tape on him. You've looked into his statistics pretty deeply here. Do you think he can continue to ascend in 2025? Because it's just been nothing but improvement every year.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I think where he excels is staying close to the receiver and being able to break up passes that way. Tackle him after short gains. If he does give up the catch, he's really good at sticking with him. Rarely does he get completely toasted, despite that lack of long speed. But I'm also not gonna sit here and pretend that for sure he's gonna be a surefire thing in this defense as well. Lou Anarumo's historically not gone after guys without that top end speed. Maybe that's for a schematic reason where he feels a little bit safer having somebody that can bail him out back there on the back end if they need to. So I'm not going to sit here and say absolutely, yeah, Jalen Jones is the perfect mold of what Lou Anarumo's corner should look like, because he's not historically. He just hasn't been. He's got the size and he's got the length that historically Lou Anarumo's corners have had, but yeah, he doesn't have that top end speed. So despite him being able to be sticky in coverage and stay close to the receiver, and he's just it feels safe, right, in the short to intermediate game, but you do worry about what could happen down the field with him.
Yeah, and hey, at the end of the day, man, Jalen Jones is a freaking steal. I mean, he's just
Yeah.
been a steal. So we'll see what happens. I fully expect him to be just fine. I mean, if he's survived this long, being a seventh round pick and he's improving, I don't see how he could, not continue to improve with a better coordinator that's going to
Yeah.
be able to use him in different ways. So just to kind of hash these out, we really don't need to go into too much detail about Kenny Moore. Kenny Moore is
Yeah.
the star right now. He's been the solidified veteran, dominates the slot position. He's one of the best at it in football. So we can kind of move on there. Justin Wally. This is one that's really interesting. When they picked him, Ballard gushed about him. He said he's really freaking good. I know that your grade on him was a little bit lower, but what are your thoughts on Justin Wally? His tape is indicative of a guy who's kind of like you said with Jones. He sticks with receivers, and he's got some pass breakups for sure.
Yeah, and I know we did that quick move on from Kenny Moore. I do just want to say I
Yeah,
definitely feel like he's the forgotten man of this defense, just because
yeah.
he's been so consistent for so long. We just assume he's gonna be what he was. I think that needs to be talked about a little bit when you're transitioning defensive schemes and you've got this veteran who's consistently been a performer. You can lock him down in that spot and in a spot in Louis Anarumo's past defenses where the nickel has been used in a lot of unique ways, and a lot of unique ways that Kenny Moore excelled early on in his career, in terms of playing short, playing man, playing zone, and rushing off the edge on in blitz packages. He's been good at that. Mike Hilton was good at that. So yeah, we do assume that he's going to perform well. We don't really see that as much of a variable, but I think it is worth mentioning. Yeah, he's going to be a force in this defense. I very much expect that. And then we move on to Justin Wally, who just because of I don't know his size a little bit, you kind of assume maybe he'll play a little bit inside, even though he played outside pretty much exclusively in college. I think I penciled him in as the backup nickel on the depth chart that I keep. I would really just assume that he's the next man up at every single cornerback spot. So if you have Charvarius Ward, Jalen Jones, or Kenny Moore go down, I think no matter which one goes down, Justin Wally's going to pop into that spot at this point. Um, at least that's I think what the Colts are hoping to have happen when they go into training camp. I don't think they want Sam Womack, and I don't think you can rely on Juju Brents at this point to pop in outside. So I think he has that inside outside versatility. I think that's true, and you should consider that more. I think just based off of numbers, there's two starters on the outside that have the opportunity to go down with an injury or for any extended amount of time. So maybe it's more likely he sees his snaps outside just by virtue of that. Uh, but yeah, I think he's a guy that can play inside also, which is super helpful for the depth chart when you're looking at guys like Juju Brents, who you haven't been able to rely on, Sam Womack, Corey Ballantyne. All these guys are outside guys pretty much exclusively. Uh, you like having those options. I think with cornerback, unlike where we're at with positions like right guard that we mentioned on last Monday's show, where you're like, you have this guy, if he doesn't work out, we don't know what's going to happen. If you're at cornerback here, even if Jalen Jones isn't the guy in the scheme, you have a guy like Justin Wally to bump up. Maybe Juju Brent shows something, he bumps up. You have other options at these spots with cornerback, and that's what makes me feel better about the depth and the high end talent there.
Yeah, and speaking of cornerback, we can get to the last guy here, and that's Juju Brents.
Mhm.
Man, showed some serious promise in 2023. Only played 9 games, but you saw it. You saw the potential with this guy. Misses 8 games. Okay, that's fair. Then he only plays 2 last year, and really he played like 1.5.
Mhm.
So I think it was, where's it at? It was such a good comment. I can't not bring this up. Um, oh, I think it was Stats Matt. Okay, I can't find it, but oh yeah, it's wild how Juju went from cornerback 1 to as low as cornerback 5 in the season and a half. That's what happens when you add Charvarius Ward, when you draft Justin Wally, and when you
Yeah.
can't stay healthy. So we'll see what happens with Juju. It's all dependent on 2 things. Can he stay healthy? And then if he does stay healthy, what kind of Juju is going to come back after those injuries?
Yeah. The injuries, yeah, what it might take a toll in terms of his long term ability to play
Oh
is
yeah.
definitely a conversation I don't know that we've had enough. Just because we're just talking about just be there is the biggest thing. He has to be there, and then we'll go from there. But even once he's back, yeah, you're talking about hopefully that ability is still 100% there after the injuries. Because if you're not, you're talking about, yeah, Stats Matt mentioned that cornerback 5 is a possibility there.
It is.
And that's scary because your cornerback 5s needs to play special teams, and he doesn't. And you've got guys like Sam Womack and Corey Ballantyne who very much do, that are competing for that same spot and give you something on special teams. So I think when he comes back, it is very much make or break. Like a lot of guys on this roster, Jelani Woods, Anthony Richardson, guys that have had injury history and high billing in the past. There's several of those people on this team, but you like what he has showed in the past. That being said, even though this is Chris Ballard's tenure still, this is Lou Anarumo's defense. Lou Anarumo did not pick Juju Brents, so he's not going to be tied to giving him any more chances than the average player would get. So this is show up or shut up year for Juju here in training camp.
Yeah, and we'll just touch on it because the comments down there, Teresa, people should be worried about Juju and Jelani Woods because they're both almost the same in the same situation. Only Jelani can't even see the field, so we'll have to see about those two. But then the next position here is one that the Colts drafted high, and that is defensive end. Now, this one is interesting because you're getting Samson Ebukam back. He looks like he's ready to go. But you also have, so right now it's Leatu Latu, Kwity Paye, Samson Ebukam, Taekwon Lewis, JT Tuamoliau, and Isaiah Land, and those are just some of the more prominent ones. What are your thoughts on this position room? I honestly think that adding Tuamoliau, that was a bigger move than it might seem, but it's also kind of like, is he going to turn into the, some people need to pump the brakes because, they're saying that he could replace Kwity Paye. He can, become this, incredible pass rusher. It's like before anything else, he had 12 and a half sacks. He's a run defender. Mm-hmm. But what are your thoughts on this position group? We'll kind of dive into each one briefly here, but it seems like it's definitely solidified better than it was last season.
Yeah, solidified. Yeah, it's a deep group. You're at a spot a lot like what we mentioned with corner. I think you're going to get into training camp and maybe a guy that you have a lot of hope for and has a lot of promises, someone that's going to end up getting cut. And that's a good problem to have. I'd rather have a team that's cutting talented players than a team that's keeping non-talented players. So I think it's good to be in that situation for one. It's like all up in the air. There's a lot of snaps to go around. I feel like unlike corner, you just kind of stick with your starters. You don't rotate very much in case unless someone's really fatigued or has an injury that they're dealing with. But on the defensive ends, you're rotating all the time, whether you're healthy or you're healthy. No matter how healthy you are, how many guys you have healthy, you're splitting those snaps a lot. So there's a lot to go around. I have no idea how that's going to shake out. You've got guys like Taekwon Lewis and Tuamoloau who can bump inside, and that gives them more chance to get on the field. But then Samson Ebukam coming off the injury. There's just a lot of question marks. Latu in his second year, second defensive scheme. I mean, there's a lot to be hopeful for. You like how deep it is. You just kind of question like who's going to be the guys that break out there and show that they're starter material. We talked a lot before this offseason about trying to find the long-term answers there at edge because there was only one edge under contract after this season, and that was Latu. You've now kind of solved that a little bit with Tuimoloau, him being the pick in the second round. He's locked up for the next 4 years. But let's also not act like Kwity Paye is off the table. If he comes out and he has a strong year, he's very much a guy that with the draft picks of Latu and Tuimoloau, you have them on cheap contracts for the next few years. So you do have some cap room there to hold on to a guy like Kwity Paye if he turns out to be what you hoped that he would be.
I mean, yeah, and we can go ahead and start with, Leatu Latu, in short, you're looking for him to step up big in year two.
Yeah.
You spent the 15th overall pick on him, number one defensive player taken in the 24 draft. He showed some promise again because of another guy we'll talk about. He played too much, but I think that there's some very serious upside. But the guy that I really wanted to talk about is Samson Ebukam. 9.5 sacks in 2023. That led the team. He had constant pressure on the quarterback. In fact, only DeForest Buckner topped him in pressures that year. And then if we talk about quarterback hits, he had 17. That's quite a few. If you can get over 15 quarterback hits in a season, I'd say that's pretty damn good. So Tell me a little bit about Ebicom. If he can come back from that injury, even 90 to
Yeah.
95% of what he was in 2023, I think that you could have yourself another season where he might lead the team in sacks.
Yeah, that's the big thing. And I don't know, age 30 coming off an Achilles tear, maybe you don't want him to lead the team in sacks. Maybe you want to limit those snaps a little bit more. Get him off the field on some rundowns, just to have him hold up and be kind of a designated pass rusher kind of guy. Maybe that role that you envisioned for Latu last season, maybe that's kind of how you slide Samson Ebukam in now, just to kind of try to limit those snaps a little bit and get more quality snaps. Give him a little bit more juice, a little bit more energy when he's out there on the field instead of wearing him down on those early downs. But yeah, huge X factor. It's so hard to predict what a guy's going to be like after an injury like that. But it's encouraging that the immediate season right before that injury was his most productive, and with this same team. So you know that's going to be able to translate if he comes back healthy.
Yeah, and then we'll go ahead and touch on one more guy here, and that's I wouldn't even mind talking because we talked about Tuamoliau plenty, but with Quiddy Pay, people kind of sleep on his sacks. He's had 8+ each season, each of the last 2 seasons. He's arguably their best run defender, and you believe that if he goes out there and has himself a solid year, I mean, guys, he could earn a new contract because, like Noah said, I mean, Tuamoliau and Latu are on cheap rookie deals. So, what do you think the odds are that he's going to increase those sack numbers? Because really, at the end of the day, I think the Colts and I think fans are just looking for double-digit sacks. I think if he could hit 10 or more, you've got yourself a legitimately great defensive end
Yeah.
because 10 sacks is absolutely nothing to just, scoff out or scoff off at.
Yeah, and I think honestly, those sack numbers would just help optics a lot, because he's kind
Yeah,
of developed
that's
this
fair.
reputation as just kind of this pure run stopper who's not going to give you a lot of juice in the passing game. If he goes out and has, like, you remember that Yannick Ngakoue season where he had double digit sacks, but most of them were just like
Cleanup sacks.
completely unpressured or like unblocked. It's not a ton of winning, but man, like he got those sacks in those big moments also, and like it just goes a long way. I think if you throw a couple of those Quiddy Pay's way, the narrative on him changes a little bit, where you're like, okay, that 50-year option makes sense to see what you have. I don't mind the 8 sack number. I think if you've got a solid guy on the outside who's giving you 8 sacks, and then you've got some guys with more juice as your designated pass rushers like Ebukam, Latu. We'll see what Tuimoloau turns out to be in his rookie season. You got those guys to supplement that at least, and that seems like what the problem has been in the past for the Colts, where you've got Quiddy Pay as your guy who's getting 8 sacks, but what you have to supplement him is just Dio Adengbo, a rookie Latu who didn't perform, at least have the production that you were kind of hoping when you went into the season. So yeah, I think it kind of hinges on him, right? Where he's like the rock solid part. You kind of know what you're getting with the defensive line group. But like him and Tyquan Lewis are like the only ones on the roster that you're like, okay, we know what we're going to get out of these guys. I think Tyquan Lewis, maybe it's a little bit more up in the air because of health issues, but Quiddy Pay is like the rock on the defensive end group. So you're relying on him to stay healthy for the whole season. 8 sacks is fine. 10 would be better, I think, just for the story and to sell a new contract if you decide to go that way. But he's gonna be your run stopper on the outside, and that's good enough.
Yeah, and Quiddy Pay, he's got a spot in Anarumo's defense. He's an anchor, so I fully expect him to continue playing the football he has. And initially he kind of struggled with injuries a little bit, and he's bounced back from that. So the next position group that we will discuss here might be the most fun. It might be the most secure on this entire list, and that's just very simply wide receiver. This one is easy. I mean, just the most prominent guys from top to bottom. And yes, I'm going to say the most prominent based off of who I think it just as far as their value to the offense. It is and will be Josh Downs. Okay. It basically already was last season. Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce, A.D. Mitchell. Then you've got Anthony Gould, and I'm probably, don't tell me, and Ashton Doolin. So you're talking about a group here that has legitimacy. I mean, they've established themselves as 6 guys that can get the job done. three of those guys are a hell of a trifecta. You've got a guy like Downs that can dominate the short game. You got Pittman, who's the possession receiver. You got Pierce, who's the deep guy. But don't sleep on Downs. He is literally a possession receiver and a deep threat.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he does everything so well. So tell me about this group. I think that this literally is the last chance for Anthony Richardson. I mean, look at
Yeah.
this group. Any quarterback would salivate over those three.
Yeah. I do go back and forth on this group a little bit. I maybe think it's just you don't have the guy right at that wide receiver. Michael Pittman's kind of been teetering on the edge of that his whole career, and maybe the emergence of Josh Downs, he ends up being that guy. I think he's close also. So you don't have the alpha in the group, but you have at least in those two guys that you could consider being your number one option during any given week, and I think that's going to go a long way for the offense. Honestly, there were no additions other than the undrafted free agents to this receiver room, but I think the Tyler Warren pick makes this wide receiver group a little bit more threatening when you have somebody in the middle of the field like Tyler Warren who's going to draw some attention. I think it opens things up a little bit more on the perimeter. Maybe Michael Pittman gets a little bit more involved on the outside. I know that's a big X factor also when you've seen what he's done in years past, and then you're not sure how much. I mean, it's a big portion, but you're not sure how much of his production was limited because of that back injury that he was struggling. It was at least some, right? You can't put or pinpoint what the percentage is on there. And then, man, it's going to come down to quarterback play. You're right, mentioning Anthony Richardson and this being his last chance. You have the deep threat that's pretty consistent down the field in Alec Pierce. You have a quick win guy in Josh Downs. You have probably your possession guy, contested catch guy in Michael Pittman there, who's going to be able to run pretty much every route in the playbook. Then who knows what AD Mitchell's going to bring to the group? And you've got upside and you have some consistency, which is a nice mix there.
Yeah, and look, guys like Doolin, he can get it done as a vertical threat. He's very fast. Guys like Anthony Gould, I'd like to see what he can do with some more opportunities. But we know what they have with Downs and with Pittman and with Pierce. It's really AD Mitchell. If AD Mitchell, and before I even jump into it, Tracy, I love this because there's game tape that shows him being afraid of contact. Like, he doesn't like it. He really hides from it. And if he can stop doing that, and no lie, he kind of T-Rex armed some of those catches where he's not extending or he's not really putting forth the effort. If he can fix effort issues, if he can actually throw a freaking block and make a contested catch, and if the quarterback, let's be honest, if the quarterback can actually perform, right, then there's a chance that he could really blossom, because some things that he does really well, he sets up defenders to fail.
Yeah.
Okay, his routes. He's very good at manipulating defenders, making them think one thing, and then before you know it, he's down the field. He creates separation. He's faster than he seems. And honestly, he's a deep threat. He's a hell of a deep threat. So that's really the biggest question mark. And if he take that leap and like even catch 45, 50 balls, oh my goodness, now that you've got Tyler Warren in that offense, guys like Downs might push for 100 catches or more. So, I mean, we'll see, but it does at the end of the day also hinge on how the quarterbacks play, because the Colts really don't have they have two quarterbacks that aren't really proven to do well, and then they've got Riley Leonard, who hasn't played a snap.
Yeah, and then another point there on AD Mitchell, you have to have him on the same page with the quarterbacks. He's doing well. He's creating separation at the top of the route, but if he breaks outside and the quarterback throws it inside, it's going to be a pick or an incompletion. We saw that a lot last season, where he's breaking one way and the ball's going the other way. He comes off to the sideline. Reggie Wayne's coaching him up, so you kind of assume that that's an AD mistake and not a mistake by Flacco or Anthony Richardson or whoever was throwing him the ball at that point. But you're right, this position group kind of hinges on him. If he ends up being a career backup, just the depth at that spot, the position group wide receiver looks uninspiring as a whole.
A lot thinner.
It's a lot thinner when you don't have that guy who might be a breakout starter for you. And still, even after his rookie season, I think that ceiling and that floor are so far apart. And you really don't know where he's going to land on that after a year of development. So you definitely hope it's on the higher end. If it's on the higher end, I think he is a guy who will challenge for playing time, splitting probably outside, not so much inside, but a guy like Alec Pierce and just allow Pierce. I mean, Pierce's a unique situation where you want him on the field for those early downs to be a run blocker, just because he's so good in the run game, and this offense is going to be so run game centric this season. Uh, but then he's also that deep threat who's doing it at a clip that nobody in the NFL was doing last year and at being successful down the field. So you kind of like him in the deep game and the run game, not so much in the intermediate routes. So AD Mitchell would have to kind of sprinkle in his snaps there and filling in for Michael Pittman probably. So that is rough for AD Mitchell, where he came into his rookie year with those high hopes and was supposed to be challenging Alec Pierce for that starting spot. And then Alec Pierce goes out and has the year he has. So it's going to be harder now for him to find snaps this year than it would have for him last year. So man, it could go either way with AD Mitchell. I think depending on which way that goes changes how you feel about the whole position group going into next offseason.
Yeah, and just to rehash his statistics, I mean, he had 23 catches. That's not good for a second round pick. 312 yards, not a single touchdown. Of course, 55 targets, which means he caught 41.8% of his passes. That's disgusting. That's just not good. That's not even a fifth, sixth round type number. Like, that's somebody who's undrafted right there. So AD Mitchell, let's just say this, he can't really do much worse because last year he sucked, plain and simple. He could not, he was out of position. He was running the wrong routes. You even go back to that freaking pass that he threw. Oh man, just that pick six. I can't even remember who they were playing, but just, he needs to step it up because he doesn't look like a second rounder right now. But yeah, so the next position might be the most fun just because of a couple of additions that could be explosive, and it really helps Indy's top offensive weapon. And that's very simply the running back position. So this one, there are four prominent names. Of course, Jonathan Taylor leads this pack. What are your thoughts on the running back position? Just to let everyone recap it, last year it was Jonathan Taylor, and Taylor tore it up. He tore it up last season. He was fantastic. He averaged, by the way, I just did a piece on this. The last 5 games, he averaged like 28.4 carries per game. He had 34 carries against the Jaguars in week 17. How many running backs in the NFL get 34 carries? That's insane. That's almost 9 a quarter. So tell me a little bit about this room. They sure have added depth where it makes you feel a little bit better about Taylor's longevity, because you can't run a running back into the ground. He averaged almost 22 carries a game.
Yeah, and this group is definitely carried by Jonathan Taylor, and just the superstar that he is when he's healthy and playing at his peak. He's a superstar in the league. That takes this offense to a level that you couldn't really plug many players in the NFL in at that spot and feel as good as you do about having Jonathan Taylor back there. So, you mentioned the heavy workload that he was getting at the end of the season last year. That's just not sustainable. You like that you have the guy that you can turn to that many times a game. You really don't want that to happen because you only have so many opportunities to be able to do that. So it was good to see them upgrade running back 2 and running back 3 at this point. I think Trey Sermon and Tyler Goodson being your RB2 and 3 last year was immediately upgraded with the signing of Khalil Herbert in free agency, where he stepped in and was that unquestioned running back 2. And then you go into the draft, and despite him being a 5th round draft pick, DJ Giddens, I think, does have a compelling case and will challenge for that second running back spot. They talk really highly of him. They like him. And I don't think they were expecting to get DJ Giddens. I mean, you could say that pretty much about any draft pick. I'm sure they're all going to talk up their guys all the time, right? They're never going to talk down about their rookies that they're drafting. They're not going to be like, oh, well, he was there, so we had to take him. So yeah, I mean, they're going to get these guys in the offense, and they're both a little bit more versatile and give you a little bit more juice than you got with Trey Sermon. Trey Sermon was that pass protector last season that came in when Jonathan Taylor he proved that he couldn't do that on third down. You couldn't rely on him, so you brought in Trey Sermon. I don't know who that guy is at this point. If it's DJ Giddens or Khalil Herbert, that guy that you're bringing in, I don't know if you feel great about that either way, but either way, you do have both of those guys, someone that has that extra gear and can bring the juice and can break off a run. DJ Giddens, I mentioned when we were talking about our immediate reflections after the draft, is a guy that reminds me a little bit of Jonathan Taylor in that second level, where he can set up those linebackers and just jump step and sidestep out of the way and make a miss and has that extra gear to take it. So I like that they got a guy who can provide that similar type of aspect to the run offense. He's not going to have that power that Jonathan Taylor has. I can't echo that enough in terms of this running back group, that this is very much carried by Jonathan Taylor. And if you didn't have Jonathan Taylor, this would not be a good room. But you're excited, at least at this point, for what DJ Giddens could grow into. And you're more comfortable with that, with him being behind a guy like Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, and Taylor should carry the group.
Yeah.
Like you don't really necessarily need another star or another high level guy. But Khalil Herbert is a nice addition. He's an explosive runner. He's not really a pass catching back. But then DJ Giddens, honestly, he was more of like a third or fourth round talent that just seemingly slipped all the way to the fifth round, which just shows how deep this running back class was this year. That's going to be an interesting name. Keep an eye out for DJ Giddens because he is going to help this offense. They're going to be able to implement new things in the backfield when you have an offense that is as run heavy as the Colts will have. Regardless of if it's Daniel Jones or regardless of if it's Anthony Richardson, they're going to need to run the football. And I would hate to see Jonathan Taylor. I know that he's fantastic, but I would hate to see him get 22, 23, 24 carries a game. Yeah. That is just not sustainable. And the fact that they almost gave it to him 30 times a game in the closing ones in the last 5, that's bonkers. That's just absolutely insane to me. So you're not going to keep someone's longevity for very long when they're just sitting out there running your entire offense. So we'll have to see how Herbert and Giddens get factored in. But then there is also, from the outside looking in, probably a practice squad guy. That's Tyler Goodson. Once they drafted DJ Giddens, Goodson's time, as a rostered member, it might be coming to a close. Of course, Trey Sermon, they didn't touch him with a 10-foot pole. I don't blame them when you average 2.8 yards per carry. Now he's with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He was actually a pretty good pass blocker, though. So hopefully they've got that with DJ Giddens. Do you think that DJ Giddens and Khalil Herbert will even have much of a competition? Because I'll be honest, I just think DJ Giddens is going to take this position, RB2, and I think Herbert's going to be the third guy.
Yeah, I think historically you think that might happen. Khalil Herbert was he had some time in Chicago where he was getting plenty of snaps there and getting heavy in the rotation. When they traded him to Cincinnati last year, he didn't touch the field very often for them, even after the Zach Moss injury. So I know you're not walking in there expecting him to be unquestioned running back 2 like he was before the drafting of DJ Giddens. But I mean, you want to play your rookies, but at the same time, this is a year where you have to win. And if you think there's even a 1% chance that Khalil Herbert's going to execute the play a little bit better as a veteran than DJ Giddens would as a rookie, then you're going to play Herbert just because you need to squeeze out as many good performances and as many good wins as you can out of this season. So I mean, if you were a fresh regime and a head coach in his first year, a general manager in the first year, I think there would be more pressure to play these rookies and these young guys. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to shake out during training camp. I think both of them are going to have an equal chance to get as many snaps as they can behind JT.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm really excited about the running back group. It drastically improved when they got Giddens and Herbert. And those aren't even, one's a rookie and the other guy has had impact, but he's not like this otherworldly rotational player. He really isn't. That just shows you how bad the room was behind Taylor. And honestly, that might be why the Colts were like, the hell with it. We got to give it to Taylor like 30 times a game because you can't rely on cement shoes Trey Sermon or Tyler Goodson, who just gives you up and down performances every snap that he's in. So we'll see. But that's an intriguing group, and I think it'll be good for them to be able to give defenses something else to look at while giving Taylor a little bit of a break because you can only stay running the ball that much for so long.
Yeah, we did hit on it with Trey Sermon where he filled that role of a pass protector, and they very much don't have that guy now, or they're going to have to force someone to be that guy. We straight up don't know if DJ Giddens can do that. He wasn't good at pass protecting in college, but he was dealing with that hand-wrist injury his final year there, so maybe that hindered him a little bit. Khalil Herbert's been average to below average at it, so you don't have that specialist who's going to come in and be that pass protector. Maybe that's somebody they find on the waiver wire. Who knows or maybe DJ Giddens and Khalil Herbert may be mixing them in. Maybe they prove to be good enough at that. So I do think we're seeing a drop off in terms of the pass protection there, which I think is is important and should be stated because at least in Shane Steichen's offense in the past, the running back's not splitting out and running passes very often and scatting out a lot. So he's usually in there to block or to get the ball. And if you're giving them the ball, you want it to be JT. If they're blocking, we don't know who it's going to be.
Yeah, and look, Jonathan Taylor might be the worst pass blocker of all three of those guys. I
Yep.
mean, he's just not he's not a receiving back, and he's definitely not a pass blocker. Thank God he's a pure workhorse because my God, he can't pass block to save his life. He's basically drapes. So that's going to be a good position group. I think that you better hope that Jonathan Taylor stays as healthy as possible because if you have to lean on DJ Giddens to be your number one, that's going to be a rotation for sure.
Mhm.
So next, we're going to talk about offensive tackle. Now, there's a question mark here
Yeah.
because you just don't know, but it's a group that looks better. I'm looking at the chart right now. You're going to have competition at swing tackle, but I think that we'll start with the right side. Braden Smith, any given Sunday, he's one of the top tackles in the NFL. Not elite, not elite. Like Bernard Ryman is on his way to being an elite offensive tackle. He's got to get extended. He's probably going to see an extension this season because he's a free agent next year. But like Braden Smith has played well, but he is the injuries are piling up on this guy. He's missed so many games over the last few seasons. So, what are your thoughts on the tackle situation? A guy like Braden Smith is probably one of the reasons that you put a question mark there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple reasons here at question mark because I think it's complicated within the situation that you're at, especially with Matt Gonsalves, where you don't know what he's going to be. But I think when it comes down to it, if we're looking at the depth chart just purely at tackle, you have Bernard Ryman at left tackle, who you're ecstatic about. There's going to be a long-term extension coming up for Bernard Ryman, and you don't really expect that drop-off to happen in terms of his play this season. Braden Smith has shown to play well in the past at tackle. It was to get him back really you'd be really kind of stuck at offensive line if you didn't bring him back. Just because you'd have Gonsalves out there at right tackle and you'd have nobody at right guard. So
Yeah.
you're looking good there at your starters, right? Bernard Ryman, Braden Smith, you're looking good. Your tackle three, I think, is still Matt Gonsalves, even if he's your right guard. If you're in a situation where Bernard Ryman or Braden Smith goes down, I think Matt Gonsalves is the next man up at tackle. You hate what that means for guard, right? So there's the question mark there, and it's a little bit of a caveat there that it definitely to the detriment of other positions, but I think you feel good about your third tackle being Matt Gonsalves, and then your fourth tackle being Jalen Travis, a rookie developmental guy. I like that group, and then who knows what goes on beyond that. Blake Freeland, if he's a practice squad guy, Luke Tenuta, Jack Wilson, Marshall Forner. Those are just the other names on the depth chart there. Not really going into my evaluation of how I feel about the tackle group, but I think when you're just looking at those numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4, Bernard Ryman, Braden Smith, Matt Gonsalves, Jalen Travis, I like that group of four tackles.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really get too upset about them picking Jalen Travis. I mean,
Mhm.
he did a phenomenal job as a pass blocker in his final season at Iowa State. He was incredible. Allowed, I think it was either one or zero sacks. I mean, you're talking about a guy who has some potential here. He really does. And with Ryman, you're basically getting a guy that is a Pro Bowl level talent.
Mhm.
I think that eventually he will make a Pro Bowl. But Braden Smith, I mean, he's still a great run blocker. He can get the job done. I know that when they played the Steelers, I think it was 2024 maybe. I mean, he handled T.J. Watt no problem. I mean, he's got ability to stifle a
Mhm.
good to great pass rusher. But then you're looking behind it. All right, and Tracy, this right here. Well, first DSG, he played so much tackle last year that I am convinced that he can be a starter. Okay, I think that it's going to fit him better to be on the inside than on the outside. Now he played over 500 total snaps
Yeah.
on the left and right side combined. I mean, he was thrown right into the flames. Ryman was hurt not all the time, but he was hurt like long enough that you needed somebody there. And then Braden Smith just could not stop getting hurt. So, I mean, Gonsalves, it'll be interesting because he's probably not going to go out there and wow like Will Fries did. I mean, Will Fries was on a trajectory that was just absolutely incredible. So
And his payday
that's why
proves it.
oh yeah, the Colts couldn't even afford the guy, and
Yeah.
they did not want to let him go. He was one of those seventh rounders that you got for dirt cheap, turned into a freaking baller. But we'll have to see. And then Tracy, absolutely not. No. That just to touch on that, I'm glad you brought that up, Tracy. Blake Freeland, he is on the cusp of really falling even farther on the depth
Hmm.
chart. If Jalen Travis goes out there, one of these guys, Ryman or Smith, knock on wood, they go down with injury. Like Noah said, if you're not confident in Blake Freeland or Jalen Travis, you're going to take back Gonsalves and you're going to put him on the outside. That's just what's going to happen. But Jalen Travis has far more potential than Blake Freeland. Blake Freeland, you saw him play plenty in 2023. I don't even think he saw the field last year, but he struggled
Yeah.
on a nuclear level. And there's a reason that when Ryman or Smith went down, they didn't turn to Blake Freeland. They actually turned to Matt Gonsalves. They turned to a rookie who was only drafted one spot ahead of him, or one round ahead of him. So we'll see. But man,
Yeah.
Blake Freeland. I mean, what are your thoughts on that swing tackle position? Because there's a reason they picked up Jalen Travis.
Yeah. So, yeah, Blake Freeland's very much, he needs to prove himself to make the roster
Big
come
time.
training camp.
Yeah.
And then in terms of, and I think he's limited positionally. I do think she mentioned in there moving, or yeah, Tracy mentioned in there moving him into guard as a possibility. But I think he already struggles with strength and power rushers on the outside. He's tall. He's 6'8". He's really long. That's already a disadvantage when you're bumping inside because you got to play with a lower leverage point. It, if he's struggling with edge rushers in terms of their strength and he's bumping inside to face 3 techs, 5 techs in there who are going to be much stronger, I think he's that would kind of show his flaws even more. So he definitely needs to develop that anchor to even be viable as a tackle at this point. So I don't think bumping him into guard is really really something that's on their mind right now. I think he's got to prove that he's stiffened up enough to be on the outside as a tackle, or that's it for him on the Colts.
Yeah, and it's not just to kind of put a bow on it. We're not necessarily sitting here just absolutely pelting Freeland saying he can't be a solid swing tackle, but when a rookie, okay, you throw out a rookie, and I know that Bernard Ryman, he was thrown to the wolves at first, right? He goes out there, he fills in at left tackle, right tackle, wherever he played, and he looked awful at first. But he developed into a serious talent, and they felt like he could continue to start. Blake Freeland, man, he looked like a completely lost animal out
Yeah.
there. I mean, he just was dominated. And when you're that big and you can't control how fast your feet move, you can't control like your arm length, which is something Jalen Travis has shown a propensity to be able to control, then you're almost, dare I say this, you're almost worthless as an offensive tackle. Because some of these guys like Leatu Latu, the bend and how well that they just contort their body, they're just going to swoop right under a guy with long arms who can't crunch those arms. Kind of like Noah said, you move him inside, it's going to be a nightmare. He's going to get dominated by defensive tackles and ends that they move inside to play on the interior. So we'll have to see, but his job is very much on the line. And God forbid if Travis goes out there and shows that he could potentially be a future starter.
Yeah.
I mean, I just don't see a spot on this roster long term for Blake Freeland. So we'll have to see, though. I mean, that's as ambiguous of a spot on the roster as there is. So.
Yeah, I agree. And then just mentioning those 4, if you really see Gonsalves as tackle 3, even though he's starting guard right now, penciled in on the depth chart, I think he's your 3rd tackle. So if Blake Freeland is your 5th option at tackle and you don't feel like he has that position versatility, then I think he has an uphill battle of making the roster there.
Yeah, and real quick before we get to the last part of the episode here, this is also true. If you look bad in the preseason and you're a guy that was a starter at times the previous season, and you look worse in the preseason against like second, third teamers, that's embarrassing. That's not good. And he looked awful he was letting he was letting Flacco get hit. He was letting Bean get hit. I mean, how could you do that to the Bean machine? You know what I mean? Like, how could you do that to such a great quarterback? But no, like Blake Freeland, he has our respect. Okay, it's not easy to play offensive tackle. You're dealing with the most
Yeah.
the most tenacious guys on the freaking field that are literally trying to kill the quarterback. Like other positions, stopping the run, right? Linebackers are trying to stop the run and they're trying to cover, and defensive backs are trying to cover and make sure receivers aren't getting past them and come up and make tackles. There's no other position defensively where it's as tenacious the intention of like a defensive end. So when you struggle as a tackle, it shows on tape.
Yeah.
It just shows more than anything.
And the Colts like those project guys. They like Blake Freeland very much in the mold of guys they like. Jalen Travis, these long, tall guys that you hope can develop into something. So yeah, definitely worth taking a shot on guys like that. Blake Freeland. Some of them will be Blake Freeland. Some of them will be Jake Witt, who didn't have a lot of run with the Colts. Some of them will be Bernard Ryman, right, who doesn't have a ton of experience, was a converted tight end, bumping in there to tackle and the third round pick. So you hit on some, you miss on some, and really it's hard to tell when they've reached their development potential, right, and when they've hit their ceiling. So you could still see some more out of Blake Freeland as he develops that anchor on the outside. That's what training camp's for.
Yeah, and we'll go ahead and hit on these real quick. So those are all the positions that we think are pretty solidified, and that's why we had a question mark with offensive tackles, just because you never know. I mean, you might have to turn to a guy like Blake Freeland. God forbid if you do, because the quarterback better look the hell out. That's all I gotta say. But we'll go ahead and hit on these real quick. So the undrafted free agents, Noah's got the list here. Indianapolis never shies away from signing an absolute crap ton of these guys. And so, we'll have Noah go over the list, but I was just going to ask, like, is there anyone? So actually, before we jump into that, go ahead and name them. Go ahead and name them. It's a lengthy
All right.
list.
All right, yeah. So and it's shuffled a little bit since rookie minicamp this past weekend. So we've got Devontae Davis, defensive tackle out of Florida Atlantic, Solomon DeShields, linebacker from Texas A&M, Jonathan Edwards, corner out of Tulane, Joe Evans, the defensive tackle out of UTSA, was initially signed and has since been cut after training camp or released after training camp.
So quick.
Marshall Forner out of Minnesota State's a tackle. Four receivers, I think. And that's Tyler Common out of Emporia State, Landon Parker out of Troy, Coleman Owen out of Ohio, and Blaine Taylor out of Abilene Christian. Desmond Little, the edge out of Alabama Birmingham, Maximilian Mang, the best name out of the undrafted free agents, the tight end out of Syracuse. And then you got two safeties and Trey Washington from Ole Miss, Ladarius Tennyson from UCF, and then Maddox Trujillo, the kicker out of Temple. And then you've got the late additions, who is Ulysses Bentley's the fourth, was initially reported to be a signing right after the draft, but he was there for the first day of rookie minicamp, just announced later, probably some paperwork issue. He's a running back out of Ole Miss, and then today they signed Mose Vaveo, center out of Fresno State. That's who they, I guess, after rookie minicamp decided to go with rather than Joe Evans. So Vaveo was a guy that impressed during rookie minicamp so much that they had to make room for him on the roster with it being maxed out. So I mean, yeah, that's 16 new names that we just threw at you. I think the big thing there, it's going to be harder to make the roster for a lot of these undrafted guys than it has in years past, which is a testament to the roster, right? I think that's good. You don't want it to be easy for an undrafted guy to make the roster, but I think the positions that you're really looking at is safety. We've talked endlessly about the depth there being an area of contention, an area of concern. You've got two guys in Tennyson and Washington that could compete for a safety spot. Solomon DeShields at linebacker. We've mentioned that depth there at linebacker. Is Hunter Wohler more a safety? Is he more a linebacker? We'll find that out kind of more in training camp, and that'll kind of determine the fate of some of these guys. We thought that Joe Evans might be a guy that could come in and compete behind Grover Stewart as that backup one tech, but very quickly moved on from him. There's still time in the offseason. We've seen guys come and go that have been released at some point and then get signed later. So there's going to be a lot of shuffling. And then you've got those four names at receiver. Four is a lot when you've already got kind of a position group where you're pretty well set in terms of the people that are going to make the roster. And then you also have Guys like DJ Montgomery, Laquan Treadwell, Aju, still on the roster from last year. So you've got 4, 8, 7, looks like 15, 16 receivers on the roster currently, which is a huge number to bring into training camp.
Dang.
So I mean, yeah, it's gonna be tough to make an impact there at receiver.
Yeah, and this gives Indianapolis though an absolute bevy of talent to look through. Though when you have that many receivers, when six are your most prominent, right?
Yeah.
Six are guys that are almost a lock to make the roster. That's insanity to have that many receivers. But the guy that really stands out to me the most, just because it was such a shocking release, and that's Maddox Trujillo.
Mhm.
You're pushing Spencer Schrader here, and I'm glad that they did this because they were bringing him in as the starter off of very limited experience. I know that they see things that we don't. They're tied closer. Obviously, it's their full time career, but this just seemed like okay. You're bringing in a guy who's got little to no,
Mhm.
on field performance, and he had absolutely nobody to compete with him. So this is a much needed signing. And Maddox Trujillo is a guy from Temple that is good. I mean, he's a good kicker. We'll have to see how that pans out. But out of these positions that we mentioned, is there one that stands out the most as the most solidified before we go here?
Yeah, I like the cornerback room, man, which is something completely unexpected uh, that we didn't really expect going into. I mean, that mock draft, you just go back and rewatch that, and I'm sure we give a whole bunch of remarks about how badly we feel about the current cornerback room when we're going there taking two guys back to back, and I think we had a safety uh, in the third or fourth in that mock draft also, which is really just a testament to how much we hated the defensive backfield as a whole unit going into the offseason. But man, the addition of Charvarius Ward, not really something you expected Chris Ballard to go out and do, and he went out and did it. And then the addition of Justin Wally, which I know we didn't give good grades on, and I stand by the grades that we gave to that selection, but that doesn't change the fact that, man, it made cornerback really strong at the very least. So I feel good about that group and feel even better just knowing that Jalen Jones has always been my guy, and I expect the most out of him, and I expect a little bit higher than some people do out of Jalen Jones. So I feel like you've got your starters all consistently there, and yeah, like we mentioned, Kenny Moore just continues to be the forgotten man that we know is going to be an impact maker on this defense.
Well, that's our show, guys. I mean, we think pretty highly of these groups. Obviously, the ones that we criticized on last Monday. It's not to say that they're not good groups. It's just to say that there might need to be a little bit more added there. And clearly, Indianapolis is trying to do that, at least to a degree, with these undrafted free agents. But don't forget to like the Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook. Follow Indianapolis Colts on SI. On X, we are at Colts on _SI. And then, of course, subscribe to the YouTube channel, Horseshoe Huddle. Click that bell to turn on all notifications. You just never know when we're gonna have something break where we'll have to go live, or one of us will have to go live. But if you want to listen to the Horseshoe Huddle podcast, that's not a problem at all, ladies and gentlemen. Subscribe to us on Apple, on Spotify, and wherever else you listen to us ramble on about this football team. So thank you so much, everyone. Enjoy your week. We will see you back here on Thursday to continue to talk more Colts football with all of you. And thank you so much, and have a wonderful night. See you guys later.